few days ago, I felt like listening to one of my favourite albums from one of my favourite bands, In Harmony by Lucy Van Pelt, better known as Advantage Lucy. They're a Japanese indie pop band, and their music means quite a lot to me. But when I was scrolling through Apple Music trying to find this album, I ran into a bit of an issue. It's not on there. In fact, it's not on Spotify, it's not on any streaming service, at least not in the UK. And this actually used to be the case for all of their albums. A couple of their albums are now on Apple Music, but I don't think that this album will ever be on a streaming service, and the reason is because of what the band called themselves. You know, they started off, they called themselves Lucy Van Pelt after the Peanuts character, but I believe they received a cease and desist, so they had to change their name, and they changed their name to Advantage Lucy. So a couple of those Advantage Lucy albums are on streaming services now, but their debut album is not. And I just don't think it ever will be. So, you know, I'm lucky enough to actually own this CD, and I have done for a few years. But then I've had another conundrum, and it's that I don't actually own a CD player anymore. The only way that I can listen to my CDs is on my PS3. The reason is that when I moved, I just didn't bring a CD player with me, and because I mostly switched over to digital stuff, I did use Spotify. Now I'm on Apple Music, and it's convenient, right? But there are some albums that I own, some CDs that I own that just aren't on these streaming services, whether it be like actual, you know, studio albums or like specific compilation albums or things like that. There are just some things that aren't on streaming services. And it sort of got me thinking, like, I do believe that physical media was so much better, because the idea of like actually owning something, you know, like I own this CD, I can listen to this CD whenever I want without the worry that one day Big Apple, Big Spotify is going to come into my flat and take it away from me, right? Which is something that happens on these streaming services. I mean, artists remove their music from streaming services, or like licenses expire, or copyright runs out. And especially if you're into more to like lesser known stuff, like, you know, this is an album from a Japanese band. I have a lot of Japanese music, and a lot of that Japanese music is not on Spotify. Sometimes you just can't find what you're looking for, because whilst there is a lot on these streaming services, there's a lot that isn't, and it kind of sucks, right? But it's not just music, it's not just CDs. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I was really getting into like David Lynch's works. You know, one of his most famous or his most iconic films is Eraserhead, and it's a pretty influential and important horror movie, right? This movie is not available to stream anywhere. So my only choice was to go out and buy a Blu-ray. And the cool thing about owning this Blu-ray is that I can just play it whenever I want, right? But then I had the thought, like, what happens when or if I end up losing my CDs, my CD collection? Because there are reports of like CD rot, and CD rot is a real concern. So the real option then is to back up my CDs, right? No, because in the UK at least, I don't know how it is in other countries, but I've literally found this out when I was researching for this video. In this country, it's actually illegal to back up your CDs into another format. And I was actually planning on buying a USB CD drive for this video so that I could, you know, show the process of actually backing up a CD and turning it into like an MP3 so that I can have it on my phone and stuff. But yeah, upon research, and I found out that it's actually illegal to make copies of media that you physically own. So like, what's the option then? Like in 50 years time, for example, I'll be an old man, right? But will this CD still survive in 50 years? I hope it does, because I take really good care of my CDs. So I would like to hope that it does, but you know, some things you just can't help. For example, this album just like disappears off of the face of the internet. I'm sure that you can download it, or even, I bet it's on YouTube actually, this album, but you know, what happens if YouTube doesn't exist in 50 years? Then what? Then one of my favourite albums of all time that means a lot to me is just, I'm not going to be able to listen to it. You know, that's kind of crazy to me. Another one is like games. I own a collection, a very small collection, but you know, I own a few physical PC games. But obviously with, Steam, PC gaming is pretty much completely digital these days. I don't think I've ever bought a PC that has come with a disk drive, because I bought my first PC back in, even laptops used to have disk drives, but yeah, I bought my first laptop back in, I think, 2016, and at that point, disk drives were long gone. So I actually did have to buy an external disk drive just to be able to play some of these games, and I thought it was cool and I loved the process of it. But obviously now I no longer have that disk drive, so I can't really play these games. And I know that they're digital, like these Ubisoft games, for example. I know that they are available on like Ubisoft Connect, but if you know anything about Ubisoft, it's that they are probably the worst when it comes to digital ownership, quote unquote, because they don't believe that you own anything that you buy digitally. They think that the way that they justify it is that you've purchased a license to be able to play their games, and they have the right to revoke it at any time, and they have done that before. They've removed people's access to the games that they've purchased digitally, and it's just so inconvenient. I mean, the whole point of like digital stuff, like streaming services, Netflix, for example, was so convenient, and it was awesome when it in its heyday, in the early 2010s, when Netflix pretty much had, I wouldn't say everything, but they had a lot. They had so much from all these different companies because there was nothing else, right? But then you have Disney, who launched Disney Plus, and you have like Paramount Plus and all of these different streaming services. And it's all so fragmented, and it's no longer convenient because it's so expensive to maintain all of these different streaming services. Amazon Prime, that thankfully hasn't happened to music streaming services. There are many different streaming services that each have different features and stuff, but thankfully, the record companies didn't think about making their own exclusive streaming services. Not yet, anyway. I don't want to fingers crossed that doesn't happen. And I think that this is why vinyl sort of made a bit of a comeback a few years ago, because the sort of feeling of actually physically owning something just gives you more of a connection to that thing. Like, yeah, it's nice to be able to just scroll endlessly and have every single album from like a specific artist just available for me to listen to whenever I want. But being so bogged down with so many choices makes me connect with the music less than I do if I go out and buy a CD and listen to it that way. It just feels more tangible. It feels more personal if I actually own something. So I'm a little worried about the future. I'm a little worried that obviously all of these industries are moving to being purely digital. I mean, the PS5 Pro, which cost £700, did not come with a disc drive. The Xbox Series S is an all-digital console. Games that even come on physical discs nowadays might not even have the complete game on the disc, so you still have to download stuff, There's so much that requires the internet, that requires you to connect to these servers online, and it's kind of scary. I mean, look at Nintendo. They don't care at all about their digital library. They shut down the 3DS store, they shut down the Wii U store. I imagine the Switch store is probably going to get shut down within like 5 years, probably, because they just don't care about maintaining these digital stores. And it's kind of worrying because, like I said earlier, I worry that in 50 years' time, there's going to be so much that's lost. There's going to be so much that we don't have access to anymore because no one has a physical copy, or no one backed it up, because for some reason in some countries it's illegal to back up CDs. And it's worrying. But for now, we're lucky enough to still be somewhat in a physical age. You can still go out and buy a DVD player or a CD player and listen to these albums, even if it's more of a hobbyist or more of a niche kind of thing to do nowadays. You can still go out and buy DVDs. Like my local supermarket, for example, still sells DVDs. Some of them still sell CDs. But man, some of these physical copies actually come with like cool extras as well. Like, who remembers back in the PS2 days when games used to have like really cool instruction manuals with these awesome, like, uniquely designed artwork and stuff? And going back to CDs, this album from Dir En Grey here, this album Macabre, is one of my favourite CDs that I own. It's probably the coolest CD that I own. Like, look, it has beads in the spine here, and it has like etched plastic on the front of it, and this awesome, like, really moody, very 2000s Visual Kei style photos of the band and stuff. These things just don't exist anymore. Even like people used to actually put effort into making their physical copies presentable, especially Japan. I think Japan has the coolest CDs. Like, I have some Japanese albums. These things here are called obis, and these came sort of wrapped around the CD like this, and I find them really cool. Like, some obis are so... I know that they're just basically ads, and it basically just has details on the album and the price there, 1800 yen. They're just cool. The designs of them are just cool. But so yeah, it's like little things like that just make it feel a little more personal, and you don't get that when you go on to Apple Music and you find an album. You don't get the booklets, you don't get the lyrics and these cool designs and stuff like that. Yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about, physical media and how much I love it. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you guys still listen to like CDs? Do you still buy physical games? I want to know what you guys think, so let me know. And I know this was a bit of a rambly video, but I just wanted to talk about how much I love physical media. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.